Can you hear that? That's funny. Tokyo Ghoul by Sui Ishida. It's really good. It's really, really good. I'm gonna prefix this video by saying I'm not a manga expert, whatever that is. I usually don't mention things like this, but the anime and manga community terrifies me. Doesn't scare me like the gamers TM do, but you know, fandoms are scary, crazy places. So thought I'd mention that I'm not a manga expert. Japanese literature is my realm of expertise. I am a Japanophile. I do live there sometimes, or off and on. I like Japanese games and Japanese films and Japanese etc. etc. And I've read quite a bit of manga, but I'm not an expert, so don't like come for me. I don't need to be came for. I don't need that. So as I said, Japanese literature is my realm of expertise, and of course Japanese literature does encompass manga. I'm a massive Junji Ito fan, and I've read a fair few manga in my day, and I finally got around to reading Tokyo Ghoul. I have so far read 3 volumes, which is about 30 chapters of Tokyo Ghoul, and it is awesome. It's really fantastically written. Starts off with a lot of awkward exposition about what ghouls are, but even though it's a lot of exposition, it still doesn't actually get into the meat and bones of ghouls, where they came from, how they're different from humans, evolution, background, that kind of thing. It doesn't do that. Basically states that ghouls are a real thing. They exist in our world, and they are vampires, effectively. They hunt and eat humans for their flesh. That is their sustenance. They are hunted by these investigators who you meet a little bit later on after the first volume. They prop up in volume 2 and they become the main antagonists in volume 3. So ghouls exist in our world and they hunt humans. They are very strong and powerful things. They're difficult to kill. They jump really far and fight aggressively. They're very much like vampires. And if you've read the Marvel Comics Blade or seen the Blade films starring that guy who dodged his taxes, then you'll know roughly what to expect, because the story of Tokyo Ghoul is Blade. But it's still really, really great. It is about a guy called Ken Kaneki. He's just an ordinary college student. He likes literature. The book loves making literary references. It talks about Kafka a lot. It's a little bit weird because I'm a huge Kafka fan, and like the book doesn't make any thematic connection to Kafka. It merely makes a fun reference to sound clever, and I found that a bit grating. That's a negative that's not really worth mentioning because it just makes me sound pompous. Yeah, anyway, so he's a nerdy, bookish college student, and he's pretty likable, and then he goes on a date with a girl that he fancies at a cafe that he goes to a lot. That girl turns out to be a ghoul, and she tries to kill him, and then she gets crushed to death by like some falling debris. He's fatally wounded, and they put her organs into him in order to save him. I don't know if that would work. Not a doctor, not even a little bit. But now he's got ghoul organs, so he's half ghoul. It's Blade. It's the story of Blade, a guy whose mum was bitten by a vampire while she was about to go into labor with him, and then in the womb he gets vampire blood, and now he is a vampire with all the positives of vampirism and none of the negatives. Very similar situation here. You've got a guy who has a lot of the power of a ghoul, but for example, his blood doesn't get picked up on ghoul scanners, so he can fly under the radar a little bit. And what I really loved immediately is how 2 things. The first is how his adjustment to the world of ghouls happens really slowly, in a good way, a really good way, because Kaneki now has to adjust to a world that he barely knew existed. Ghouls were just kind of criminals. They were things that hunted people and put them in danger and had to be chased and hunted by a kind of police force. And he knows that. Everyone in Japan knows that in this world. But now he has to fall into their world, and it takes him so long to adjust. One, to the fact that he now must eat human flesh. It is the only thing he can eat. He can still enjoy coffee. He loves coffee. All ghouls love coffee and sugar, but nothing else. He tries to eat sandwiches, he tries to eat ramen, and he throws up, and he describes the taste of it. And he describes the taste of it in an overly poetic way, as a kind of tongue-in-cheek thing, because he's a nerdy, bookish college student, and so he's overly descriptive when he describes how it tastes like cement or whatever. I really like it because it takes so long for him to adjust, and it would. It's not, you know, when you watch a film or you read a book where someone seems to adjust to a whole new world way too quickly, like in a Neil Gaiman novel. Suddenly it's like, ghosts are real and you're a ghost, and they're like, oh, I'm a ghost. And it just doesn't feel very realistic character-wise. But with Kaneki, he takes so long to adjust to this world of ghouls that you really believe it. He struggles for a long time. He's still struggling at the point where I am. He's still completely baffled by it all. I think that's really good character writing, but at no point does it feel stodgy or lumpy or bland or slow. It's just believable. It just makes for a believable character and a believable story. The other thing about him adjusting to the world of ghouls is that we adjust with him, and we see the veil over the world of ghouls being lifted, and suddenly we see what ghouls are, how they live, how they survive, and how they are hunted, and how they are not predators. They are, of course, they are predators, but they have a life that they're trying to protect, and they have to support one another, and they have a hidden underground community. Because yes, they must survive on human flesh. Does that mean they deserve to be hunted? It's actually kind of a fun moral quandary. I didn't think that the series was going to be as clever as it is, and I can see that this is probably going to continue to develop as a moral question. If your only form of sustenance is human flesh, and in order to get that you really have to kill people or farm people, but you don't farm people, and a lot of the ghouls don't kill people, they find other ways to get human meat. Those ways are, for now, relatively mysterious. There's a cafe that they all this group of characters all work at, called Antique. This cafe supplies them with parcels of meat. Where they get those parcels is a mystery for a while, and then you find out one way that they get them, at least one way. And that one way is really fascinating, and it plays into an issue that is quite specific to Japanese culture, or at least more so than many other cultures. I thought that was really, really fun, but I'm not going to give that away because it's a bit later on. But that's really fun as well, and that instigates another moral quandary in your mind, which is really, really fun, but I can't really talk about it here. This introduction to the world of the ghouls is really, really fascinating, and the idea that if your only form of sustenance is human flesh, do you deserve to be hunted for that? Obviously you're dangerous, obviously you're gonna end up killing people or at least eating people, but you're not bad. It's really interesting, genuinely fascinating topic. The series is also beautifully drawn. It's really gorgeous. I have very, very few issues with the art. What I liked in particular about the art and the writing combined is how much it captures a feeling of Tokyo. It really feels like it's set in Tokyo, and it has, in the art, these tiny, tiny little details of, say, a Lawson that has this neon blue glow, and it's lighting up a street in a quiet suburban neighborhood, and that street has those railings and has those rainwater troughs and ducts and everything that is so iconic in Tokyo life that it really makes you kind of feel at home there in the world, and it feels so familiar. That is combined with the writing, which speaks to the strangeness of Tokyo. If you know anything about Tokyo, one of the most interesting things about it is that it is geographically, physically, the largest city in the world, and yet, because it's made up of these little bubbles, these little condensed and intimate areas, that you really get to know Tokyo, and you get to feel your bubble, if you like. And there is a bubble within this world. It takes this giant swarming, impossibly large city and condenses it down into a very intimate space. You have a small cast of characters who are all lovable and likable and very well established and well written and individual in their own way, and it makes them all very welcoming and recognizable, and you feel comfortable in their world even though their world is in Tokyo. And that level of intimacy is actually really, really hard to manage, and at no point is it vocalized, at no point is it really registered, it's just there. And it's fluid, it feels organic, it feels like a natural progression of the art and story and writing and dialogue combined to create this homogenized intimacy in this group. It's really lovely, really, really impressively done. I have one issue with the art, and that is this. Now, I have been told that the art sees a massive improvement as the series goes on, and it is a medium-length series with still a lot of room to grow from the point that I'm at right now. But as it stands 30 chapters in, something that frustrates me, there's this thing called a Kagane, which is a special power that ghouls have. Each ghoul seems to have their own Kagane, and it's effectively a weapon that bursts out of their back. Or at least I've seen about 4 or 5 of them so far, and they all do this. They all look a little bit different. They look like whips, tentacles, crab legs, butterfly wings, whatever. They always sprout out of their back, and they look dopey as fuck. Like, they look utterly... I found one here. And this is our protagonist. This is his bursting out of him. And I can barely tell what it is. I was totally confused. So that's Kaneki's. He inherited it from the girl whose organs went into him. Yeah, and there it is bursting out of him on the next page. Well, and there's the previous page. Anyway, it's just so hard to tell what it is. Now, there's an anime. There's an anime adaptation. I have not seen it. The reason I haven't seen it is because I've been told over and over, and I've seen online in forums, etc., that it's not a very good adaptation. And if you have a manga and an anime, and it is fairly common knowledge in the community that one is far better than the other, then you're going to go with the one that's better. You know, with, for example, say, and again, the fans will come for me, if you've got something like My Hero Academia, I read the first volume, but I wasn't going to keep spending money on books when the anime does a wonderful job of adapting it. It looks exactly like the manga. It has that art style, and it's beautifully animated and beautifully acted, etc., etc. So why would I buy the manga when the anime is doing a great job? With Tokyo Ghoul, I've been told that the anime does not live up to the manga, that it changes a lot, that it is just not a faithful adaptation, and if you want the right, true, good story, then you read the manga, and that's what I did. So I haven't seen the anime, I probably never will. Why would I? I'm reading the manga, I've decided to do that. So maybe these Kaganes just look better in the anime, maybe it's clearer what they are, but as the art stands right now in the manga, it's very unclear what the hell they're even supposed to be, what they do, what they look like. It's a bit weird. So that's my only gripe with the art, is that these powers that ghouls are supposed to have that kind of define them look goofy as shit. That's it, really. That's my only gripe with the art. Everything else works really, really beautifully. Okay, so that's my first impression of Tokyo Ghoul. I think it's super duper beautiful world building, really, really great character narrative arcs. The translation is excellent. The translation is absolutely brilliant, especially in the dialogue. I think it's tight, I think it's concise, I think it's playful in the right places. It gives each character a very distinct narrative voice. The translator or translators, I think there's two, they do a really, really good job of nailing specific character quirks, you know, repeat phrases here and there, or an accent that's implied. It's nice. It's a nice little detail. I really appreciate the translation work here. So yeah, it's great. I'm really impressed, and I got weirdly addicted to it. You know, I bought the first volume, suddenly it was done. I bought the second one, suddenly it was done. I bought the third one, and obviously now I'm going to buy the fourth and carry on. Can't really stop. So that's a good recommendation. I can't stop. Subscribe. Don't come for me, please.